Recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Griffith, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have to say, coming from coal country, that nobody has mentioned coal. There are ways that we can use coal to increase our fuel. I like to talk about the 4 Ds. Drill, which we've talked about a lot today. Dig, which includes our coal resources. We're #1 in the world. Let's not forget we've got it. Discover, which of course includes, finding new ways to use new technologies and use old fuels and new technologies as well, which our universities and think tanks should be working on. And last but not least, we've also heard today about deregulate, which means the EPA has got regulations coming out our ears that affects every sector of our market, and we're consistently seeing problems. And along those lines, Mr. McNally, could you tell me, is there one regulation in particular that's so onerous, so hard for business in your area or in your field to deal with, that's preventing or limiting production and increased employment? Can you name me one?
Well, I'm just in the research and analysis business, but I would think, and my friends from the industry can speak perhaps better, but I think the biggest concern, or two really, one would be that the government is going to stand in the way of infrastructure projects that are needed to get investment in domestic oil and gas production. And the second would be uncertainty about regulation of hydraulic fracturing going forward. That's probably one of the biggest concerns I think industry has about investment.
All right. Mr. Gerard, did you have some thoughts on that?
Very quickly, I would just add 3 things. The first one is access itself. That's a decision on the part of the administration. They could make it today. The second one is the lag time in permitting that Congressman Barton talked about. If you're given access and you can expedite that permitting process, it will happen quickly. The third one is, which goes back to the comment the Congresswoman made earlier, there's all this talk about subsidies in the oil and gas business on taxation. We get no subsidies from the tax code. But more important than that, today's hearing is on gasoline prices. The Congressional Research Service has looked at the proposal, the President's proposal, to discriminate against our industry and repeal those standard business deductions that we receive, and concluded that it would have the effect of decreasing exploration, development, and production while increasing consumer prices and possibly increasing the nation's dependence on foreign oil.
So what you're saying is that 3rd D, discovery, which would also include exploring, would go down and prices would still go up.
It's a net adverse hit to our ability to impact the price of gasoline, the Congressional Research Service's views.
All right. Let me ask you, Mr. Breen, if I might for a second. It's been said that 70% of American casualties in Iraq and Afghanistan have been sustained on logistical missions, i.e. convoys. If our troops had more energy-efficient generators, batteries, and vehicles without any deduction in safety or functionality, we can lessen the amount of required supply missions and reduce our troops' exposure to attack. Such advancements are obviously positive, but if we convert, as I think I heard you suggest, if we convert our military vehicles and aircraft to biofuels, such as the Green Hornet your testimony highlights, what is the difference between a convoy that transports ethanol and one that transports diesel or GP8, except that the ethanol products are far more expensive for the American consumer, and in this case, for the Pentagon?
Oh, sir, you mentioned fuel convoys, which is a facet of life in a counterinsurgency environment where you have isolated forward operating bases. This is one of the ways the military posture is different from our civilian posture. On those forward operating bases, we require liquid fuel. So you're saying it's
safer to do ethanol than it would be to do gasoline?
No, sir. I'm saying that we require liquid fuel, be it ethanol or whatever else, to fuel generators, to generate the power on those bases, as well as to fuel the vehicles. So there's a huge push in the ground forces to move to solar, wind, and other renewable technologies. You don't have to move any kind of solid fuel.
So then your testimony about the Green Hornet would be slightly off. You're talking about going to some individual solar items, because
in the ground force, sir, but the Navy, for example, highly interested in making sure that it can use a diverse set of. The Navy wants to be sure that if the supply of liquid crude oil is disrupted for whatever reason, the Iranians close the straits, that the Navy, which is a huge liquid fuel user, can diversify its supply.
That. In the futures market, let me ask Mr. McNally, if the futures market was occupied solely by physical consumers of oil, what would the result be?
The market wouldn't function because physical consumers of oil need to transfer price risk to those willing to take it, by definition, people who are willing to speculate. And if they didn't have the speculators or financial market participants, the market wouldn't function. It would be much less efficient. Prices would be more volatile.
And, of course, a lot of us don't have natural gas that comes to our homes, and we can't use it. I think, Mr. Milburn, you testified that it wasn't good for trucking, probably because there's not a supply network set up where you can stop and get more CNG. I know that in my neighborhood, even though I live in the largest city in the newly configured 9th Congressional District of Virginia, I don't have natural gas coming to my house. Mr. Eichelberger, who used to be a proud constituent of mine in the 9th Congressional District of Virginia, used to live in the Reiner area. Did you have natural gas in that county, which is the largest county in the 9th District?
We were 100% electric.
Yeah, which is based on my favorite, coal in that area. You can't have electricity without coal, and that raises prices up. Just looks like to me this administration has an all-of-the-above policy to raise the cost of energy on all of the above. Thank you. Yield back.